City of Stevens Point Historic Preservation Design Review Commission meeting, recorded June 1st, 2000.
Call the meeting to order of the Historic Design Review Commission for June 1st, 2022. It's 4 p.m. Roll call.
Siebert?
Here.
Monk?
Here.
Christensen?
Here.
Thank you. McFarland?
Present.
Scripps?
Here.
Malewski?
Here.
And Hornig.
Here.
All right, we got a quorum. And Carol and Jordan, you won't have voting capabilities, but you can participate in the discussion.
Okay. Number 2 on the agenda, the minutes for the May 4th meeting of the Historic Design Review Commission. I would entertain a motion to accept the minutes.
I move to accept the minutes.
Second, please.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Discussion, any changes, corrections? Yes, no? Seeing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Number 3, a request from Create, Portage County, for a design review to paint a mural on the north-facing wall located at 1224 Strongs Avenue. Again, entertain a motion to accept the request.
I move to accept.
Okay, a second, please.
I'll second.
Carol, thank you. Discussion. First off, ma'am, need your name and what you do.
Hello, my name is Dana Sonnenberg. I am a project activator at Create Portage County. So just a little bit about this project. The building owners came to us and said that they had a space that they would like to see painted. We went through our normal application process, so we accepted applications for about 2 months that was open to local community members, but also to any artists to submit. We have on the Create board a selection committee that then reviews murals to make sure that they meet our artistic standards and any other like filters that they need to go through. This year it was really just creativity and then the artist's ability to execute their vision. From there, we proposed 4 different murals to the building owner and also his own selection committee, and they settled on this one, which is a proposal by Cody Sepp, who is a local Stevens Point artist. This will be his first mural with Create Portage County, but he's participated in a lot of our other programming since then, and I believe you can all see his proposal.
One quick question.
Yeah.
From looking at the picture, the mural is there, but does it go around the corner?
It does wrap around, so that
that's
top
okay.
right-hand corner you can kind of see, and then the bottom, it's that little offshoot to the side there. So that faces the Goose patio. If you're familiar with that space right now, there's that Central Waters sign that would be coming down as part of that installation.
So, any questions, comments? Carol?
I have some comments. I know that when we had that other mural of Justice Ginsburg, there was a comment that we couldn't comment on the content, that you could either vote it up or down. And I guess I've thought about that a lot since then, and I think that there is, let's just say if we voted it down, then can you give the people that are maybe coming back with another example of a mural that you might want, that what is your criteria? You know, is it just a miscellaneous mural that you're putting on a wall? And I think all of the other ones that we have in town all have some kind of historical input to them. And I think that we're better off, and again, I'm talking about design, you know, but I think that under our purview, and obviously the murals are newer, but this is an art piece, is design. It has the elements of design, just like a building would have elements of design. And it is something that we look at whether it fits in the area. And to say that you can't look at the design of a mural, whether it fits in the area, seems to me that we are giving that, what would you say, power to create the organization rather than thinking about it as how does it fit into the environment? And everything else we do, we look at how does it fit into the environment. So I went downtown, and this, of course, I mean, Corey, I mean, it's a great piece of work. Obviously, he's very talented. But I think that a lot of the other murals that we have are either on an individual side, like the Ginsberg one is, and then there's a miscellaneous nondescript building next to it. Where is there another one that's just, a lot of them are on singular sides of a building, not necessarily on a side that has a lineup of buildings. And this one is on a lineup of buildings, and it's on the first one. Goose has kind of cleaned up his backyard, but the next three buildings, which two of them, probably three of them for the windows, one's already renovated, and it has just completely changed what it looks like by putting in new windows and respecting the brick that it has, the brick facade. The next one is the Fox Theater, you know, the back of it, which again will be updated and brought back to something that is respectful of the back of that building. The next one is what's going to happen in the back of the old Ideal place, again, respecting the building because the facade is old, it does face north, and I mean, part of that, this whole thing is to upgrade the back sides of those buildings. But right now, we have participated in making three of those buildings, you know, look really nice, I think. So this one starts that progression there. And as far as, again, design, you know, obviously it's well done, but I think that because it's on a facade of, it's like a streetscape back there now, you know, particularly when the buildings have been changed, you know, I don't know that this one, can I say, fits in. It's just, we don't have another one that does not have history. And this is on the facade of that almost streetscape now, and it's the first one. And I think what's going to happen is, because it is so colorful, you know, first of all, I think the gorilla would be scary for little kids, but because it's the first one in that line along there, which, you know, with Goose is kind of quiet there, but those three other buildings have a real presence to them, even more so than they do right now. But I think that the location of this one does not compare to the location that we've had murals on other places. So I think that this would be, again, thinking about the content of it, I think that it should be a discussion that we have, whether we're going to stay with a theme of some kind of history or relates to history or relates to more current history. I think we should have a discussion about that, because otherwise it's going to be a hodgepodge of murals. And I don't know whether that's the best way to go. But above and beyond that, I think that this mural in that spot, when that has become a streetscape, it has become a long line of facades, I don't think that this is the appropriate place for that mural.
Okay.
I have a comment on that. On the opposite end of this block, facing the same direction, is the very first building coming from the other street is another very colorful, big mural that doesn't have anything to do with history. It's flowers that represent like a snapdragon as a dragon and so forth, a dandelion as a lion. So.
But it does represent the local ecology.
Oh.
And it's used to amplify what's here in central Wisconsin.
My point is, it's
yeah,
not
true,
a historic
true.
mural.
Yeah, okay.
So, I guess my only comment would be, when we first put together the mural committee many years ago, 5 or 6 of us, the whole idea was to present Stevens Point's history to visitors coming in, so that we could tell the story visually, I guess, of the history of the city. Hence the loggers on, excuse me, as you come across the bridge, or the people in the Point Bakery, that sort of thing. Now, a couple of them have disappeared, admittedly, like the post office and the title company. But I guess, kind of segue off of Carol's comment, this really doesn't fit any sort of historical theme of any kind. Anybody else?
So real quick, Carol, really excellent point on the concerns about, you know, how it fits into the downtown area. The alternative is what you have there now, which is a concrete wall, essentially. Part of the reason that Create had started to identify these gray walls in the downtown area, they're unsightly, they're better off being utilized for something other than a gray wall, and bring some activity and some placemaking to those specific areas. All the murals that we had done with Create last year, the City of Wonderful Water, of course, there's a relation to the city itself. That's our historic slogan. The RBG mural really had nothing to do with Stevens Point, but I believe it was part of, what am I thinking of?
The centennial of the women's suffragette movement.
Yep. And the other, like, we have the Fox mural downtown as well. You know, these are activities, and when you say we shouldn't get, I advised this body 2 years ago, last year, on not getting into the details of, you know, we'd like to see this mural changed for this purpose. And we said to Historic Preservation, vote it up or vote it down. Don't be on the design review of the physical mural itself. If you don't like the mural, you know, vote it down, send it back to Create to bring something back for your consideration. But I'll say the same thing I said last year and in the last few years is, these are really unique opportunities to present different placemaking activities in the downtown area. Take some of these really dilapidated exterior walls that don't bring any type of activity or interest to the back of our buildings. You know, if it was being done on like a historic facade, I would say yeah, I've got problems with that and real concern, but they're not imposing the mural on any historic brick. The facade of the downtown will remain the same. It's just the back of those buildings that for almost 30 years were, what do you want to call it? You couldn't see the back of those buildings because of the mall. You're getting some more activity with the parking lot and bringing some of that life and difference to the back of those buildings, I think, is an important piece of this whole puzzle. I said this a few years ago as well. Nobody's taking Instagram photos with John Jonas on the side of the Rose House. And so the Riverman mural, really important historical context. We've got a lot of historical murals downtown. I think that's excellent, but I think there's an opportunity here to have other murals downtown that aren't always historic based as well. So, like I said, if you're gonna vote it down, send it back to Create to bring back. What we were running into last time was, you know, color schemes and trying to avoid getting into the details of design of the specific murals. But I think, you know, I think it's an awesome opportunity to take some of these buildings and really a building downtown that's not historic by any nature and add some life and activity to it. So,
especially from the activity standpoint, this area on the southern extent here of the photograph, Opera House is working on installing some landscaping and I believe a gazebo in this general location. So that'll be another focal point for more of a community space where they can use that mural as part of any placemaking activities that the director mentioned.
But I think because it has become a streetscape back there, because of all the renovations, I think it's going to take away from the actual historic buildings that are there, that have been renovated, and people have put a ton of money into them. And I think that will, because it's the first one, you know, Goose is very quiet. And then there's those three buildings that will have a lot of things going on. And I don't think that the murals, yes, you want people to come and look at them and take a selfie, but I don't think that's our primary focus. I think our primary focus is to maintain some integrity downtown. And I think because this is so active, I think it would be better on a wall. And again, we have to discuss whether or not we are going to ask for some kind of reference to history, you know, because I don't think that can be dull necessarily. You know, I think that this in this position on that side is not the best choice. And I think that on your approval basis, you said approve for it, that it would not be on that side facing Goose.
And ultimately, it would be up to the
Preservation Committee.
Sorry?
No, I'm sorry. Somebody just asked what my meeting was. I'm actually at another gathering, but sorry, didn't mean to interrupt.
Okay. So I guess maybe to kind of summarize what the statement or the comments that you provided, you're open to having a mural on this wall. It's just you want some historical component added to whatever is being painted on that.
And something that does not take away from those 3 buildings that are doing massive work, investing in our downtown, in the old buildings, so that the mural isn't the first thing you look at. Because right now, with the active colors and everything else, it will be the first thing. When in fact, those 3 buildings that they're putting a lot of money into is what we're trying to keep going downtown.
Sure.
Right.
Maybe to help the applicant, would you be satisfied with the image that's being depicted on the mural, but hone in more so on the vibrancy of the colors that are being?
Are we going to do a history aspect of it? Are we going to speak to history? Because if we're speaking to history, then a gorilla is not history in Stevens Point. I mean, then you could have a mural of puppies. You know, I mean, where is our theme? What are we trying to hold all these murals together with, you know, so that it has some cohesiveness to it, instead of jumping all over the place as far as miscellaneous murals. I mean, a miscellaneous mural can be beautiful by itself, you know, there's no question about that, but are we and should we not speak to what we want with these murals? Are we basically saying we're going to get tourists to take selfies with them? Or are we speaking to that early part that it has to do something with history? You know, some reference to it. I mean, City of Wonderful Water, you know, I mean, there could be some incredible things that are just houses with, you know, a modern look at old housing, you know, that could be very interesting and still be something related and a touch point with Stevens Point.
I think it's important to remember this is the rear of the building, right? It's pretty bland. If you go down and you're sitting at Goose, there's not a whole lot besides cobblestone that you're looking at. I know we're working on creating more of those historic aspects on the back of those buildings, but having a space that allows for some creativity, young minds to come downtown, learn about the history, but also see, wow, this is a historic building, but there is some great color in this area.
But a gorilla?
I'm wondering what it says in
Sarah?
our.
Sarah, go ahead.
Can you hear me? First of all, I have
Yes.
very spotty internet,
yep.
so if I'm out, I'm sorry. But I am wondering what our guidelines say about murals.
Right.
I know we've had conversations about paint, of course, on historic facades and on brick and things like that. But I think some clarity about the role murals specifically play within our historic guidelines and what our commission is and is not tasked with would be helpful as these mural projects come up, because I think that there should be some clarity about, because there is a little bit of an inherent friction in painting historic buildings, right, with the kind of role of our commission. And so I would prefer having some kind of overall clarity about the boundaries between our commission and these projects.
Well, I think you expressed that, did you not? It's either we don't get into the design, it's either up or down.
Yeah, and you know, it's mainly because this specific mural's already been vetted through another organization. You know, it would be thumbs up or thumbs down. If you're going to deny it, you've got to give it a reason. If the desire is to have more historical context, then create that perspective. I have one thing that I would add is Carol, you brought up, is this mural taking away from the investments that have been made downtown in that specific area? Does the wall that's there now take away from those investments? I would argue that the mural will enhance that area as opposed to take away from it, because these photos are actually relatively recent. And, you're taking this brick that's borderline dilapidated, adding some color, adding some enhancement to it, and making it an attractive place. And I would challenge the commission, are the murals that were painted last year, are those detracting from the historic nature of Main Street on the backside of these buildings? And I think realistically, probably not. They're enhancing that area behind the buildings. We're not, again, if we were talking about putting a mural on the front of 1055 Main that has got some really beautiful historic brick, I think we'd have a bigger issue with it. But because it's on the backside, it's not a historic building, and it's taking these concrete brick walls and adding some color and flair to it, and brings people towards the back of those buildings to explore the other enhancements and the other investments that have been made. I would have a really hard time, if I was in your seat, denying something like this. I think it's a really unique opportunity. We've got a really good partnership with Create, and maybe a direction that we can give Create next year is to do historic-based murals instead of doing the colorful murals that they put out calls for.
I guess there's an awful lot of people that use that back area now by cobblestone, so it's becoming a front. And I guess a gorilla? I'm sorry.
If I could comment on that, I know that it feels like this really odd, out of place thing, but when I look at that mural, I don't just see a gorilla. I see all of the best parts of Stevens Point. The gorilla holding a butterfly on its finger. To me, I see harmony, and I see peace, and I see the uniqueness that exists in our community that goes back to the history too. I wouldn't necessarily come downtown to look at the loggers, but I would go see that, and I would spend money at Goose, and I would go into the stores that are near that because I had gone down to see that. And I feel like there's a wonderful amount of history in Stevens Point, and I'm excited to continue finding murals for y'all that enhance that and elaborate on that. But I also see the value in speaking to the younger people, to their interests, to the community that exists currently. And that's what I see when I look at that mural, personally.
My question.
Sarah?
When I attended a community downtown development seminar over in Appleton, one of the things they talked about was placemaking and utilizing art as a way to enhance that downtown environment. And I'm not sure if it's the purview of this group to say what type of art that needs to consist of. I don't know that that's necessarily our task. I know we provide some valuable input, but I'm not sure that's within our scope to say this is what has to happen for all murals in the downtown area. I think we're allowed to weigh in on it, but I'm not sure that that's necessarily within our scope of influence. I don't know. That's just my thought.
Well, Mark, kind of building off of what you're saying, that's kind of where I'm at. I'm not so interested in caring about the content and style of the art, but where and under what conditions we allow art to be installed in the historic district. So some of the things that were mentioned are the fact that this wall is cinder block. It's not a historic facade, that it's back facing, it's not towards the street. Those are the kinds of conditions under which I'd like more clarity of what kinds of, what is considered a permissible canvas for these art installations and what would be, going too far in terms of, disrupting the historical character of downtown. The content of the art, I am in agreement, it's not really our purview as a commission to determine, right? But I would want some clarity under, what is appropriate and inappropriate for these projects.
Anybody else?
Right. There was just one other comment. And I'm not saying that we have to have, there's a whole purview too of what historical things could be. And we should have that discussion, you know, whether, obviously, when a building is on a streetscape, you are dictating to them what colors they can put there, you know? And I'm not saying that Corey, the artist, should change all the colors on the mural. I just don't think that's the appropriate place for that mural. And if then, on the next part of it, whether or not we want to think about how are the murals going to have to have some reference to some kind of history in Stevens Point. As Tim said, that's how it started. And there's no reason why it shouldn't evolve. But then you also don't want it to evolve in so many directions that you don't have direction anymore, you know, so.
And that's surely something that, you know, we can work on for the next application cycle, is to have essentially a concrete guideline in place. Because right now, you know, historically, we've been using certain design guidelines as they apply as the indicators as to whether or not a mural passes the test or not.
And I know the other thing, I understand that, yes, it's a plain wall right now that looks kind of dirty. There obviously are no bushes there. I walked there today. You know, nobody picks up the trash that's right there. The trash bin is right next door. The other thing is, when you put a mural on something, I know the loggers have been there for 20 years?
About.
Yes, 20 years. So this is not something that you're going to paint that wall, and particularly that this is a block wall. It's probably going to stick much longer than some other walls. It's probably, you know, got the moisture barrier and whatever else inside because the building isn't that old. But this is a decision that is long lasting. Just because it's paint, it doesn't mean that it's not going to be there for a while. So, I mean, that's the other thing that you think about. This is not temporary in the sense that it's going to be gone in 5 years when something else is going to come by. So, and that's another thing. When can you paint over a mural? Anyway.
And I would argue that the loggers and the one on the square, all the, I don't know what, the Haymarket one.
Right.
Draws, I watched people taking selfies in front of that one on the square last Saturday.
Yeah.
And it does draw a lot of comments from people. And we've always had tours, and the loggers are a big draw. And I don't know, this is a historic district, and should that not kind of fit in the historic district as opposed to somewhere else? And again, the theme doesn't seem to fit the historic district. Anything else? Anybody else? Oh, go ahead. Sorry. Didn't see you back there, sorry.
I gotta come up to the thing or I'll yell at myself. I had nothing, I can't really see the mural from back there, so I'm not particular for or against this particular mural, but I just wanted to encourage you to not think of this as the back of the building, because I've been driving, I drive that Center Point Drive twice a day, every day. I've been doing it for the last 30 years. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the front of the building. I mean, that's the part I see. And that's the part everybody sees. And you've done a lot in the last few years. I mean, with those new apartments going up there on Center Point Drive and the new hotel there on Center Point Drive, that, you know, all of this really is the front just as much as the part that faces Main Street is the front.
I think that's probably Carol and my position, that
Okay,
it is
yeah.
the front, yes.
Yeah, and it just, as far as the historic theme, I think that the front facades is where I think you're concerned about colors and design being historically accurate, whereas some of our murals are not really historic at all. But anyway, just wanted to let you know that that's the front to a lot of people. It really is.
Sure, it's good.
Thanks.
Any other comments?
I'll just say I don't really see the difference between the content of this mural and, say, the fox, like the foxes that are on the side of the building. I don't know what that has to do with
Where are they?
Stevens Point history either. It's on the side of the Dive Point Scuba building. Of course, that's more black and white. It's not as colorful, but in my mind, there's not much of a difference to say that somehow that's an acceptable mural, but this isn't acceptable. I think that's just parsing what art is important to you personally. I think it's a beautiful piece, and I think it looks a lot better than the brick that's sitting there.
Well, originally, though, I thought they were wolves as opposed to foxes, but anyway, that was supposed to be painted over every year, a new theme every year. Well, it obviously never happened, but that was the whole idea.
Sometimes plans don't work out.
Yeah.
But I think, again, that's on a sidewall. It's on a sidewall. This is the beginning. This is the first beginning, the first wall in the beginning of the back face of Main Street. I mean, that's what I'm really thinking about. It's the first building, and it's almost the first one that you would see when you come in that new entrance there. As this fellow said, when you come in, you actually look right down there, and that's almost what you would see first, because that road comes in on the west side of Shopko, and it's right there. For you know, obviously for seeing it, that would be a primary spot. There's no question about that. But it's also next to a string of buildings that are becoming a streetscape. And we wouldn't put that on Main Street on one of the fronts of the building. It's on the side, it's on the back, but the back without another building that has some integrity next to it. You know, you're dressing up some areas with these murals. In this place, it's the beginning of and the progression of that area being cleaned up and becoming something, becoming a presence, becoming a sense of place.
In my opinion, when it comes down to the historical aspect, you know, the University of Stevens Point has a large fine arts element to the college, and having a little extra creativity downtown certainly doesn't take away from any history of Stevens Point. The university has been here for many, many years. And we have a lot of history already downtown too, the Cultural Commons area. There's a lot going on there as well. I would hate to see a opportunity for some color on such a dull wall and gas pipes right now. Would it be better to have nothing and nobody's attention is drawn to the downtown, or to have a little bit of intrigue triggered while seeing an amazing mural when you're seeing a back of a building?
But you can still have some sort of history content in there and be as colorful as you want.
Sure.
I mean, it doesn't have to be this particular thing.
I mean, this is not necessarily all or nothing.
Oh, yes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I guess I see it as a piece of art. I don't know that we want to necessarily restrict all art in the downtown area to have to be historically significant. We haven't historically required that, and I'm not. You know, I think it's a plus if it is, but I don't know that I personally would want to make that a requirement. I think we've had a lot of discussion. I think everyone knows pretty much how everybody feels, and I think a lot of good viewpoints have been brought out. I guess I would think we should consider calling the question.
Anybody else? Okay. Do you want to take a roll call vote, or?
So the motion is to approve. We have a second, so we probably wouldn't need to do a roll call.
Okay.
We can do it.
All right. So the motion is to accept the proposed mural as presented with the criteria of the staff recommendation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Aye.
I request a roll call.
Mark? Okay, we'll do a roll call. Seibert?
No.
Monk?
Aye.
All right. Christensen?
Aye.
McFarland?
Aye.
And Scripps?
Abstain.
Abstain. All right, we have 3 ayes, 1 no, and 1 abstention. And that
Oh, yeah,
And
that's right, I
Melissa.
don't get to vote.
You can't vote.
Well, if she abstains, then
You can, Sarah's abstention still counts for quorum, so it would be a
Right.
3-1.
okay. Okay.
Yep. Okay, passes then, right? 3-1? Correct.
3-1.
Thank you.
Can I just make us just a request, Adam, that perhaps the city, maybe we think about in a future amendment of our guidelines, just putting more information regarding murals so that our commission has some kind of, things, a blueprint for looking forward at future projects.
Yeah, we can work on something later this summer and fall, kind of what we have for our facade improvement grant guidelines. We can work something up and then we can have a discussion on that later in the year.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I have to leave, so if you could please move somebody into an active voting position, please.
That will be
Carol,
Malewski.
right? Yeah, Carol.
All right, thank you.
Okay, number 4, a request from the city of Stevens Point for the demolition review to raise the principal structure and associated parking lots at the property located at 1450 Water Street, which would be the Edgewater Manor. So I would entertain a motion to accept this proposal from the city.
Also move.
Okay, a second, please.
A second.
A second from Mr. Monk. Okay, comments, questions?
We'll start with a discussion.
Oh,
with the
I'm sorry.
director.
I didn't, sorry.
That's all right.
Didn't see you standing there.
The city has been in the process of drawing down the tenants at Edgewater Manor. That process began in December of 2021. I'm sorry, 2020. And essentially, this last May, the building has been vacated. There's a lot of historical context to this conversation, which includes the fact that the brick is beginning to pull away from the concrete honeycomb structure. About 6 years ago, the city did do a temporary Band-Aid-esque fix where we riveted, and you can see in this photo, the brick back to the honeycomb structure. At the time, the structural engineer informed city staff that this was about a 5-year fix, and also recognizing that there were other issues. The roof is in need of complete replacement. It's beyond its 20-year useful life. The windows, there's a number of gaps that are in the windows that's allowing water to seep in between the concrete structure and the brick itself. And so a number of years ago, 2018, we actually put a bid out to do a number of repairs, including removing the entire brick facade and replacing it with a different style of exterior siding. And the total project cost came in well over, we had budgeted about $4.2 million. In today's terms, we'd be well north of $5 million, just given the costs of construction materials. And so that's when in 2020 the council made the decision to shut down Edgewater Manor and begin the process to vacate it. We've done some asbestos abatement testing, so there is asbestos in the building that will need to be abated before we do raise the structure. The long-term plan is to redevelop the parcel. Likely a request for proposal would go out. We would have developers submit proposals back, and then the Common Council would make the decision on which proposal they'd like to pursue. And of course, the design for that building would come back before this body, similar to that we had for North Side Yard, and other projects that are coming down the pipeline will come before you as well. So in the larger context, the building was built in the late 70s. There's currently 81 units, mostly single bedroom. In fact, this same brick, I think, is on the inside of all the apartments at Edgewater Manor. It was built as a ultra-low income project for seniors. The Housing Authority retained ownership up until, I believe, 2004, at which time they turned it over to the Redevelopment Authority because the Housing Authority had no interest in retaining ownership of that specific property and running it as a Section 8 affordable senior housing project. When the last time this conversation came up, which was 2015, of closing down Edgewater Manor, the Redevelopment Authority felt as though it was becoming too political, and they sold the property to the city of Stevens Point. So while Redevelopment Authority owned it and managed it, and the Community Development Department owned or managed it on behalf of the Redevelopment Authority. The technical transfer of ownership really didn't change the management of it, other than the Community Development Director is no longer property manager. We had contracted those services out to Candlewood Property Management. So it's not technically it wasn't technically a Section 8 voucher holding property after 2008. It was pretty much anyone who wanted to live there could live there, but it was advertised as affordable senior housing. I'm kind of getting into some of the nuances of that whole project, but I think it's an important context as we talk about why it was built, the historic use of it, and the reason that it's being proposed to be raised and redeveloped at this time. So I'm more than happy to answer any other questions. The last time we had a raising request in front of this body was for the Fox Theater. The body chose not to approve of the raising of the Fox, and that was appealed to the Common Council, which ultimately approved or overrode the Historic Preservation Commission on the raising of the Fox, and that's how we ended up with 1/3 of a building instead of no building. So
I got two questions. First off, is there going to be the process to save whatever can be saved, so it doesn't go into a landfill somewhere?
So we have been actively selling things like the refrigerators, stoves, washer dryers in the building. We've had a number of the units already sold. There are some folks that are interested in taking some of the cabinetry out of some of the units. It's very how do I phrase this? It's very much mid-70s esque. There's really nothing, I think, of historic significance. A lot of it is very inexpensive cabinetry, laminate countertops.
I'm thinking more along the lines of the electrical, the wiring and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so we did have Bushman Electric go through and see if they could save any of like the breaker boxes or anything like that. And according to the gentleman that came, that when that building was built, the electrical was already out of date. So there's really no reason for them. I mean, they were seriously interested in like taking breakers and the breaker boxes and repurposing that.
That's what yeah.
And they might still, Bushman might still do that, but they had really nothing good to say about what's in there now. A lot of it's pretty vintage, 1970.
Well, I just recycled
1978. Yeah.
Okay, second question. Why not turn it back into a park? Continue the park? As opposed to building a new building of some sort or another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the conversation about using it as park space has been discussed. The biggest component is you already have public access with the Green Circle Trail along the waterfront there. You know, call me the Community Development Director, which is who I am, but you know, Pave Paradise put up a parking lot kind of a thing, but I think there's better value in that specific site for some type of development as opposed to retaining it for park purposes, because you already have public access along the waterfront there. But if that's something the Park Commission would want to pursue, we could always have that conversation at Park Commission.
I guess I'm thinking of what Wausau did with their riverfront and rapids. They don't build buildings, they parkify it. New jungle gym kind of thing that Wausau put draws huge numbers of people.
Yeah.
So, you know, admittedly it isn't very big in terms of width, but that would be something maybe to think about.
Yeah. So I always tell folks, so that Edgewater is within the TIF district, and in order to pay for those types of improvements, you have to have money coming into the TIF district. And the only way of money coming into the TIF district is through development. So you could leverage, let's say, a $26, $27 million project there, leverage that increment and do a jungle gym or some type of public enhancement at Piffner Park as an example, or do some type of enhancement at, shoot, what's the one on the south side of Clark Street Bridge, General?
McLaughlin, or Admiral.
Yeah, that you could do an enhancement there with the development that occurs there. But just like City of Wausau, they had to do an apartment project on their waterfront. Wausau on the Water is a private development that abuts the waterfront, but there's the trail that goes in front of it. In order to get those types of amenities, you have to have development, and this is one way to leverage this specific site.
So
Sure.
are you, I guess the question is, what happens to the people that were previously in Section 8 housing, or the people that were in there until the last where did they go? And does the city then, because those are subsidized housing, right? So then,
Yeah.
where do they go?
We had a handful of Section 8 voucher holders in Edgewater, and we were able to relocate those folks to other Section 8 projects in the city of Stevens Point or in Village of Whiting, not so much in Village of Plover or Wisconsin Rapids. Majority, I would say more than half of the tenants of Edgewater actually moved across the street to the Berkshire, and we had structured a way for us to subsidize their rents through the Edgewater Fund, which was a separate capital fund that we had created a number of years ago. So we have set up a way to subsidize those former residents in the Berkshire and at a few other Candlewood properties throughout the city. But I was really happy with the absorption of those specific tenants into the community. It's been really successful, and the city actually had hired a social worker to work through finding new housing for these tenants and finding ways that we could further subsidize the non-Section 8 voucher holders, because technically if you subsidize their rent, it's counted as part of the income, and a lot of times that would disqualify you from receiving the Section 8 voucher program. So we also paid for moving expenses for all the tenants. That's something the city did as well. And again, hiring the social worker who helped them find additional housing,
So you're thinking then of making it more commercial apartment building that you would put on that site? Not another low income?
Correct. Yeah, the downtown plan that was done a few years ago by Vanderwall and Associates identified that for either market rate apartments or market rate condominium style development. I think it's all going to depend on what the market will bear and what we get for requests for proposals back. We have not had that kind of a in-depth conversation with the council on what could be at that site once Edgewater is eventually raised, and that's something that I'm hopeful to have hopefully the next month or two with them. The first step is, because it's within the historic district, this body has to approve the raising of that specific structure.
Any other comments? Sarah?
No. Have we already moved to approve?
Not yet.
We have a motion.
Yeah, you
Got a
said-
motion, yeah.
And a second.
Anybody else? Okay, we have a motion and a second to raise the high-rise, Edgewater
Nope,
high-rise?
Edgewater, yep. High-rise is another building.
I'm sorry.
High-rise
right.
Manor is a whole other
Yeah, high-rise,
building. Yeah,
that's
okay.
what I said, Edgewater, sorry, Edgewater.
I think the housing authority would have an issue with that, but.
So, take a vote. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Opposed? Okay. So unanimous, I guess.
Thank you.
There isn't another, there isn't, did you have something?
It's the nature of
Closing
No,
section?
just, it's on the next page, just adjournment, so. Adjourn.
Oh, yeah. All right, we will adjourn at, what'd you say, 4:48? I can't quite see.
4:48.
There on it.
Yep,
Okay.
4:48.
We are adjourned.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.